from Councillor Taylor, if there's a mover for those. Councillor Brown, Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. We have no public forum today. Any further announcements by yourself, your Mayor?
No.
Perfect. Announcements by myself, just acknowledging the 90th anniversary of our earthquake, and a thank you to all our staff, councillors and everyone who worked on the various celebrations we had in commemoration of that earlier this week. I would now like to ask if we have any announcements by management. Yeah, your announcement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to just update the committee on where, on the news, I guess, yesterday around the RMA or the Resource Management Act repealing or being changed into the NBA, SBA and the CCA. Good luck to it changing the NBA. That means something different to me, but anyway. So we're going to have a kind of a changed approach to the RMA, which I guess changes the focus into strategic planning, and then the natural and built environment separates those two things. So there has been, with the Resource Management Act, it's quite difficult to do for councils to actually get strategic planning, because we get quickly lost into debates about property rights and against, overall public good directions. So I think that fundamentally that kind of structural flaw is one of the main things that this new regime is trying to overcome, and to stop the kind of the slicing and dicing of things to the point where really it's quite hard to get things across the line as they were intended, and it tends to be a compromise that nobody is really happy with. What does it mean for us? Well, I think we're in an advanced district plan drafting phase, and there have been comments around New Zealand about, from some other places, about that they've wasted their time on doing that plan, the draft plan. I think that's not, I think they do themselves a disservice, really, those councils that are thinking that, because the thinking, I've gone through from the change from town and country planning through the RMA, and even during that phase, good thinking is good thinking, and it will go through from one legislation to the other. If we are here just to comply with new legislation, then that is not really doing ourselves a service about, taking into account our own community's needs. So in my view, particularly under these times where we are under quite incredible pressure in terms of housing and those sorts of things, it would really be remiss of us not to have been thinking through that in terms of our district plan and advancing that thinking. The program for the phasing in of those things is as quick as they can do it, but RMA is a very complex beast, and tearing it apart and putting it back together in a new way is not going to be done overnight. So my understanding is that the law is going to be phased in 3 years' time at best. At the end of the year there will be a draft, but that won't include consenting detail and those sorts of things. So I think that our process around our draft plan is an investment into terms of that, and what we probably need to do now is unbundle opportunities to have alignment with that going forward with any new legislation, and have a bit of a think about that. And I know that the current item on the agenda today has been withdrawn, and I think this is another good reason to just sort of reflect on that and think about things like how we might like to consult on it in draft or full proposed form and those sorts of things, in addition to the reasons you've withdrawn that item.
Thank you, Richard, and just foreshadowing that we are planning to withdraw the draft district plan paper, item 2 on the agenda, following some conversations yet to be had with ourselves. That was a little premature. So, if there's no questions for Richard, I'm just conscious of time that our external presenters need to leave, so I'll just ask if call for any minor matters. Councillor Bogue.
So I have a minor matter on the legislation on Māori wards.
Thank you. We will note that for discussion later on. And can I ask for a mover of the minutes from Thursday the 3rd of December be taken as a true and correct record? Councillor Crystal and Councillor McGrath. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right, passing on to our presenters. Thank you very much for waiting patiently for us. So this is your first meeting with us, Bill. Welcome. And I'd like to introduce Gus, Charteris, and of course Tony as well, who are going to take us through our first paper. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mayor Kirsten, Madam Chair, committee members, tēnā koutou katoa, members of the public. So really pleased to put forward this review of local government support and innovation. Obviously, really good that we've got the author of the report, Gus, and want to acknowledge all of the work that he's put into it, and also of Tony, who's produced the summary for all 5 councils as part of the local authority shared services programme management that she's in charge of. So I will actually take the report as read, to save time, but hand over to Gus to do some highlights.
Cool, thank you very much, Bill, and nice to see you all again. We had a great session, I think, in December where I took you through the report, but I thought it might be useful just to really quickly recap on some of the main issues that have come up through the review. And very briefly, basically what I found in the review is that there aren't any major gaps in the types of services that you would expect to be doing in the business and industry support in Hawke's Bay. We're kind of ticking the boxes for setting up the right support services, but what we are not doing is resourcing those services anywhere near effectively, in my view, and there are opportunities to coordinate those services more effectively. So those services are subscale and they are holding back Hawke's Bay Inc. being as effective as it could be in the economic development space. Hawke's Bay Tourism is an exception to that. Hawke's Bay Tourism in the review was found to be operating very effectively and efficiently. So Business Hawke's Bay's financial sustainability has been flagged for a while. That was clearly an issue that came up through the review. And Business Hawke's Bay are undergoing a process at the moment to decide what their future might be. But in short, I found that there is a case for change for Hawke's Bay, definitely to improve the clarity over the roles and functions, increase collaboration and coordination, and to increase in the capability and capacity to deliver services for Hawke's Bay businesses and industry development. One of the things that came up in the review was that businesses found that they just did not know clearly who was leading on different things and where they could clearly go for support services. So that's quite an easy win, but that's something that we could redesign to help our businesses more effectively. There is also an opportunity to work with our treaty partners to co-design what a system could look like for Hawke's Bay that better meets the needs of Māori economic development. And so that is definitely a gap in the system that I see at the moment. The review proposes a range of, investigates a range of forms and proposes a particular form. The next phase, which you guys will be hopefully agreeing to pursue, will be a co-design phase to really test what kind of form is going to work for Hawke's Bay. Probably just one other point. There's often so the review wasn't about Matariki. So Matariki is our regional economic development strategy. The review found that there are some things within Matariki that could be improved around governance and around the resources that are being made available to actually implement Matariki, but the review wasn't about Matariki itself. This is about the structure, the entity that we have in Hawke's Bay that helps implement Matariki perhaps, but do a whole wider range of functions that are focused on business and industry support. So I might leave it there, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gus. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Bogue.
Yes, thank you for that. You talk about the significance and importance of working with your treaty partners. What relationship do you have at present? Does Business Hawke's Bay have Mana Whenua on the board, or what is the relationship you have now, or are you starting from scratch?
My understanding, Business Hawke's Bay doesn't have iwi representation on the board. I think the invitation has been provided to iwi at different times to be on the board, but that is definitely an opportunity that I see. So I think in a good system, you would want councils and iwi, the Crown partners, along with business and other experts on that board, so that you've got a nice tight relationship between, what we're doing for our community, the public good aspects of economic development, along with what getting a good business voice on that governance.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on the report? No, there being none. You've got off very lightly. Thank you, Gus. I think it was a really comprehensive paper, and just reading through the report, there's some key recommendations there. Councillors will note the recommendations that we have from staff in the report, namely being that this is a paper for information purposes only, and considering those recommendations and considering the further stages that are recommended in the report as well, including that key engagement with treaty partners. So, with that being said, I'd like to ask for a mover for the paper. Mayor Wise, seconded by Councillor Crown. Mayor Wise, do you wish to speak?
Yes, just to actually commend everybody that has been involved in this review and report. It's been a very comprehensive piece of work and given us a clear set of recommendations to move forward in this space. With my other hat on as an accountant, economic development is obviously an area of great interest to me. So I'm very excited to receive this report and consider our next steps. And I guess I would just comment perhaps about the lack of questions. We have already obviously had a workshop, so thank you, Gus and Bill. We've had an opportunity earlier to ask any questions that we may have. So once again, just thank you for everybody involved.
Thank you. Councillor Crown, do you wish to
Nothing
speak?
further.
Councillor Bogue.
Just may I ask a question about the actual resolution before we vote on it?
Yes.
G says that, oh gosh, where am I? Sorry, I seem to have lost my place here. The recommendations include, that we, that the 5 councils, that we support the 5 councils continuing with supporting, I don't know where it went, but it's here somewhere.
So G reads, support the 5 councils' commitment to keeping Hawke's Bay Business Hub open.
Does that have financial implications other than the status quo?
Did you want to put that?
If I could ask through you, Madam Chair.
Tony.
I'm happy to answer that. There has been a commitment, or conversations are underway with Business Hawke's Bay should they make any decision about what their needs are in terms of that business hub. That's the costs, and I guess that aspect is out of the scope of this report, but noting that it's particularly that we may need to engage with Business Hawke's Bay in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? There being none, I'll put the motion. So that is A through G. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, and again, thank you for your patience in presenting. Right, I would now like to move that item 2 be laid on the table, and I won't give a time for when that'll come back to us, because I think in light of the announcements yesterday and a couple of internal discussions, that may need a round or 2 of committees before it comes back to us. So I will move that. Do I have a seconder to lay that on the table? Councillor Keith Price. There being no discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Richard's just said that he will be Luke and present to us our 3rd paper. which is the resource consent activity update found on page 193 at the very end there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there's two developments being reported here. One in Ahuriri, which is a multi-unit development, and that's as it's a clear site. I think the key thing to note is that some of the heritage provisions obviously don't apply to that. And in the other one, the Raffles Street development is that building that is, I'm sure you've seen it, looks a little bit tired at the moment, shall we say. So that's next to the coffee shop there. So that building is proposed to go into apartments, and there's currently an appeal of sorts from the applicants around, or they would like to argue around the development contributions and financial contributions.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that resource consent update? Councillor Brown.
I'm not sure if this applies, but I was just wondering, the one in Ahuriri, have they had to go through a process around the blast radius from the tanks? Is that within that zone?
No, it's outside that zone.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Tapane.
Thank you for that. My question is connected to the report more than the report itself, and I'm looking at the 10 properties on that title and the potential for intensification across Napier. Is there going to be a review of our green spaces, and when's that next up for review? I'm just conscious that we'll need to, if we're going to intensify across the city, we need to create spaces.
Yeah, this is exactly why we need to carry on with the district plan review, really, because I think this is right. But the other thing that is in tow at the moment is a spatial planning process, which we're about to kick off, and that really is trying to get the thinking around what we're going to do with our entire city in terms of all of those things, and try and get our community to all have an understanding of how we're going to go forward and deal with the issues relating to growth and various other parts that make a city great.
Thank you very much.
All right, if there's no further questions on that, I will ask if there is a mover for the paper. Councillor Wright and Councillor Crystal. Does anyone wish to speak? There being none, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll now move into discussion of minor matters, and just a note for the public that minor matters can be discussed at the meeting. However, the meeting may not make a resolution, decision or recommendation about the item other than to refer it to a future agenda.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I wanted to raise the issue of Māori wards because we all got a letter today from Mike Reid from Local Government New Zealand informing us of the process around the proposed legislation. This legislation is going to remove the discriminatory clause which have allowed citizens-initiated referendum to overturn council's decision to have a Māori ward, and in effect this has meant that of the 24 local territorial authorities that have over the last few years voted for Māori wards, only 2 have actually been put in place. So the information also shows that we've got an opportunity to decide yay or nay if we want Māori wards by the 21st of May in order to have them in place for the 2022 election. Now, I had thought when I first heard that was that we'd have to do a whole representation review, which the Māori wards would be part of that discussion if council put it forward by the 21st of May. But I see from that letter that we wouldn't have to have our final proposal ready until September of this year. So to me, I think there is an opportunity there for us to look at the possibility of voting on this issue before the 21st of May, and then having a look at what we would put out if the representation review is required from that vote to our constituents, to the community by early September. So I just wanted to discuss whether or not the staff would be able to put something together in front of us so we had that opportunity to vote on the issue before the 21st of May, and as a result, if we decide to go with Māori wards, then to have a representation review by September. And just one other thing, in case anybody wants to discuss that, but I just want to remind you that submissions for this legislation are open today and today only. And I personally have made a personal submission. The link is on the letter that the Mayor sent us. So I urge those of you who feel strongly about this, preferably supporting it, to go online and make a submission by 5 o'clock today, because it's our only opportunity. There's no way we can vote on it now, of course, but I'm sure that the Select Committee would find your submission, would appreciate it. So, so that's me.
Thank you, Councillor Bogan. I think the second half of your discussion there is quite pertinent around there being one day for submissions, open and close, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. The first matter you discuss around whether or not Council should have a debate over Māori wards prior to those dates that you mentioned. I think that's something that we have previously discussed as a council that we may wish to take some time in doing with our treaty partners, and I'm interested in everyone's view. I suppose in minor matters we have one option, and that is whether we refer it to a future agenda or not, the discussion of Māori wards. So that is open for councillors' discussion. I'm looking at you, Mayor Wise.
There you are. About to pipe up. So through the chairs, I would certainly be supportive of us having this come to a future meeting in terms of, as Councillor Bogue has raised, staff capacity and resourcing available to progress this within the timeframes that are ahead of us, and then of course discuss our formal process as a council and what we would wish to do in regards to the changes proposed for the Māori wards. And just further to that, just a quick update in terms of submissions. Morohuti Tomu is also going to be putting a submission in today on behalf of Council based on our direction that in principle we support the proposed changes.
Thank you. I understand Adele, our Director of Corporate Services, would like to speak.
Thank you, and just through the chair. So, yes, we're already progressing how we might be able to approach the changes in the background from Council Officer's perspective. Just letting Council know also that Warwick Lamp, our electoral officer, has also been in contact today to offer his support and what those needs and changes are. So we'll certainly come back to Council with what that looks like in a future committee.
All right.
Just a little bit of more information about representation reviews, because the last one we had was 2017-18, which produced the determination of the full ward system that we're now part of. It would look, a representation review, I don't think you could just look at the Māori wards, would be looking at the whole system, our whole electoral system, because possibly if there was a Māori ward, one or two councillors, that would somehow possibly come from the existing number of councillors. So it is quite complicated. I'm glad we've got more than a couple of months to look at it, but it is an important issue, and I'm really glad that we are, prepared to have a discussion and vote on it.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, I think the general consensus seems to be that we would refer this minor matter onto a future agenda paper. I'm seeing nods around there. I'm not required to take a vote, so unless anyone disagrees with that, I think we'll make that recommendation. Yeah, okay, perfect. We'll note that in the minutes. Thank you. That was our only minor matter, so I'll now close the future Napier committee, and I won't close with a karakia because we're going back into